Hi, welcome to this week's edition of News Talk. I'm John, Dave, and myself. We're going to look back over Leinster's opening victory of the Pro 14 against the Dragons last weekend, all the other Pro 14 action on the first weekend. Look forward to our game against Treviso and all the other Pro 14 action. So lads, pretty good win, 35-5 against the Dragons, 5 tries. That's on the pro side. On the con side, we picked up quite a few injuries, which is concerning.
Yeah, like you say, the win itself was good. Dragons are like all Dean Ryan teams. They're physically, they attempt to impose themselves physically on the game. Not sure if they have much else. Jamie Roberts, as usual, was his usual Pro 12 or Pro 14. Jamie Roberts. Ross Moriarty didn't get sent off, which I think he would have.
Jamie Roberts got a yellow card though.
Yeah, he would have got good money on that. Yeah, we were good enough. I mean, we beat them well. We a lot of like our second try. If you look at our second try, from kickoff to try scoring, they don't get a hand on the ball. There's 23 phases. It's absolutely superb rugby. But you know, at the end of the day, it's Dragons. So
yeah, I thought I agree with you, Dave, that Dean Ryan's teams can be quite physical. Like Richard Cockrell's teams can be quite physical, and yeah, we wonder where that came from. But no, they showed high degree of competency, I thought. Yeah, they were still the Dragons. Their line out fell apart, bit of a shambles like ours did previously. But it wasn't the want of trying that was it wasn't
their lack of effort. You're right there.
Exactly. So, but yeah, there was lack of other things other than effort. And whether you can blame that on Dean Ryan or just lack of skills, I don't know. But we'll face worse teams than them this year, is all I'm going to say. We'll face less spirited teams for sure.
Certainly.
This year. Some of our play was pretty top notch, and it's going to be qualified by people saying, "Oh yeah, but you know, you can't do it against Saracens like you do that against bloody Dragons," and yeah, it's just a shit league and all those cliches. And you know, it's not without some truth involved. It is easy to look good when your opponents are not at the same level as Saracens, for example. But Jesus, we were shocking relentless in parts of that game, like the pace we put on the game and the amount of the way we just relentlessly offloaded from out of tackles and all. You know, previously under Joe Schmidt, for example, we had this possession game that was based on rooks. Now we seem to have a possession game that's based on offloading, which it just puts such pace on the game that you stretch a team one way, you stretch a team the other way. Something's got to give. Either you've got to make a handling error or they're going to give a line break. And I thought we were looking good there. And if we build on that for the season, who knows? At least we won't be playing Saracens.
You can't build a game around rooks anymore. Certainly not with the way the rook has been interpreted by referees. If you keep the ball in the ruck, you're going to lose it. It's as simple as that. You know, you have to look at it that way. So having that quick movement, and I have to say, I thought Jamison Gibson-Park, I thought he was superb. He kept the game moving. He kept the opposition guessing. He varied his play very, very well. Mixed it up. Long balls, short balls, left, right, the odd kick, a couple of breaks. You know, he displayed the full gamut, and most importantly, his decision making I thought was superb. He made the right choice every time.
Yeah, but he was given a great platform from the pack.
Yeah,
and I thought Ruddock, and it was, you know, like he was one of the very big noticeable lads to be missing. Say the tail end of last season, a couple of weeks ago, particularly in the game against Saracens, and when he came back, I mean, you know, you could nearly say, "Oh, is there space in the team anymore for Ruddock?" And the way it was being selected towards the latter half of the season last year, you kind of questioned, but he certainly put 2 big red lines underneath his name, say, "Don't forget me."
Absolutely.
I thought, you know.
It's great to see him out.
Sorry to interrupt. Once again, I thought, man, Baird, My God, that kid is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, we saw him sort of stripping a ball against Saracens too in his last game, and then he comes out and he sort of, he scores a try at the end of the match. I know, look at, kind of a fortuitous kind of whatever way the ball came to him, but he still was in the right position at the time and shows a great turn of pace to cover 20 meters, like to snip in under the sticks.
Well,
Himself,
that was excellent. What really impressed me about him was his physicality in the tackle. There were a couple of times he hit guys, because you look at him and you think maybe he's a bit willowy and he's not come fully into his growth. But he hit guys and he was driving guys back, because up to that point, I've been really impressed with how James Ryan had played. He'd been in full-on beast mode for the entire match. He was absolutely knocking guys back behind the gain line every single time. But when Baird came on, he was doing the same thing for a guy who looks, but obviously isn't, less physically capable, shall we say, than Ryan. When you consider he's younger and hasn't had the years of professional conditioning that Ryan has had at this point. So I was really impressed. I was impressed with him with and without the ball.
Yeah, well, when you see, like the guy is, I think he's about the same height as Ryan. Well, no, maybe a little bit shorter than Ryan, but he's got the goods in terms of, like, yeah, he looks like the athletic lock alongside the tight head lock of James Ryan. But both of them have amazing pace, but which was demonstrated on Friday night. Like for 2 second rows there. Remember Malcolm O'Kelly used to have that kind of pace when he was a young guy. He was very fast for a 6'8" guy. Most 6'8" guys are not very speedy, but both of those guys are fast. I mean, Ryan Baird showed his wheels against Glasgow there in the last game before lockdown, and James Ryan has shown it on several occasions. What a pairing to have, looking for 10 more years out of like those two guys. But I was impressed seeing Rhys Ruddock doing Rob Penny's game plan there the whole time. He was out in the tram lines so often, somebody said it was to do with to have a big guy out there to resource rucks, which kind of Penny thing as well. When they happen out so far, if you're offloading a lot and you end up out in the tram tracks, you want to have a big guy out there to dive into a ruck or to protect the ball or whatever. But he certainly showed it, and he's always had a good engine, Rhys Ruddock. He's always, he's always been
still comparatively young compared to how long he's been around.
29, yeah.
Yeah.
He was taken off, as I remember, he was taken off an under-20s tour to Australia or something like that to sub up to the Ireland team.
Right.
Or maybe it was Ireland that were in Australia. I can't remember what way around, but I know that
the under-20 World Cup, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so a 19-year-old playing for the full Ireland team is pretty, and he played for Ireland as well, or played for Leinster as well, obviously, at that point. So he's around so long. It's easy to forget that he's only 29, which is, compared to us guys, is very, very young. Even for a rugby player, it's not that old, and for a six or a second row, it's.
How do you think the switch between Larmour and Keenan went? I thought it went really well.
Very impressed with Keenan. He does look like
a natural, I have to say.
Yeah, but Keenan does look like a natural fullback. He seems to have that nous. He's also got amazing work rate. He seems to be everywhere. But he's got that nous that you need at fullback, like your Garvin Dempsey's or whoever. That just being in the right place thing, being good on the high ball. Commitment, though, so much to do with commitment. To get to balls, to get, people say, I think it was Garvin Dempsey just used to say that he just followed the ball and was always parallel with the ball and, in line with the ball, should I say, on the pitch. And it was literally that simple. And that's how his positioning was. He was never too far away. Even if a guy kicked for the opposite touchline, he was never going to be too far away. But a huge element of that is the commitment in getting there. And that's what that guy has. He obviously has a pretty serious engine as well on him,
He showed a great turn of pace for his nearly try. So he's got some serious gas as well.
Yeah, he's kind of, in a way, he's kind of understated, but because he doesn't look flashy. like Alarmer would look flashy. He's not a big stepper or but he just does everything really, really well, which is what you want in a
A
fullback.
bit like his kind of his three predecessors in that 15 jersey.
Yeah, very much so. And Larmer maybe a bit of liberation for him back on the wing, you know. Doesn't have to worry about all that cerebral shit of positioning and, you know, as much anyway as a winger, and can come into the line, can do all that. You know, gives him a bit more freedom for what he's really good at, which is all that stepping and hitting the ball at pace, hitting the line at pace. You know, so yeah, maybe they should leave them that way if they don't disappear off to Ireland camp together.
Who knows? I thought, sort of summing up the game, I thought we kind of tidied up our scrum. Like, obviously, it was under a lot of pressure 2 weeks ago. You know, and then things started working again. Like, okay, the standard of the opposition was significantly different. Like, we still were able, you know, we were still going through. We got lots and lots of offloads. We made 600 meters. You know, we got plenty of line breaks as well. I think there was 16 line breaks. So, like, they were kind of, I suppose it was a good game to get back on the horse and to get the systems back working again after the shock to the system when sort of Saracens were so good against us 2 weeks ago.
They just had our number.
Yeah, you can always tell. I mean, whether the opposition's good, whether the opposition's bad, you can always tell when a team is, for want of a better phrase, on it, when things are clicking, and things were clicking for Leinster on Friday night. You know, the scrum, as you say, all the systems worked. The things that were supposed to happen did happen. The scrum looked strong. The back row stayed down, which always makes a big difference. And the lineout was good. We've been critical of the lineout in the past. And okay, the Dragons lineout kind of collapsed a bit rather than ours.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, I thought it was very good, efficient performance, and you know, something I think that, like, you know, as you regularly say, Dave, that's one of the fixtures that's Leinster are in this no win situation, because they're expected to go out and put X number of points on the Dragons team and get the 5 points out of the fixture. But they did that.
Yeah.
However, like I kind of mentioned at the very start, like, we did suffer a few injuries, and I saw some updates today. Like, with Sexton, obviously he's out. Now, whether they would have brought him over to Treviso, we'll come to that later on. But like, Frawley's out. Deegan looked like he got a bad injury.
Deegan is certainly out for I'd say for the foreseeable future. Frawley's going to return to play, so he could. It's 5 days, so he could be back for Benetton.
And Porter, I thought he took another bit of he took a bit of an injury to his hamstring as well. So, like, I was reading something today. It said he'd be back hopefully for the internationals. So that's not till the 24th of October. So, like, that's what 2 or 3 weeks away.
He won't be back until November anyway.
Won't be back for our fixture against Treviso. Just quickly turning our attention to some of the other fixtures. It was good to see a crowd in an Irish stadium last weekend. Maybe so, yeah. Well, obviously it's up in the north, so might be different up there. But
I was talking about Connacht.
Oh yeah, a couple of hundred in Connacht. Yes, that's right. Yeah. Well, we'll start with the Connacht game then. I mean, that was an interesting game. Like, it was one of the dullest first halves of rugby I'd seen, and I've played in a few very dull ones, and like, I was very tempted not to bother watching the second half, and I'm glad I did, because the match kind of came alive. Once again, Bundy Aki just shows he's the heart and soul of that club.
Oh yeah. If there's a worldwide commitment shortage anywhere, you know where it's all gone. Bundy Aki's taken it. The man is just unbelievable. His commitment to that club and that team is second to none. And it helps that he's a pretty brilliant player as well, you know. But there's a clip doing the rounds on Twitter of him after he'd been substituted, and he's standing at the hoarding, and he's just roaring and screaming at the team and hammering the hoarding, just, you know, giving energy into it. You know, he's so committed, and he's such a good player. And Connacht, when he's available to them and around the place, Connacht are a much better team.
Of course. Yeah, he's a gem of a player. He's a very naturally fit guy, and he's obviously tough and big. But like you say, David, it's his commitment that's most impressive. Especially he committed to. I remember he committed to Connacht, and Pat Lam left a few weeks later, and he threw a hissy fit and wasn't impressed at all. And I think that's kind of a measure of his own commitment. I'm sure he got over it after 5 minutes and realised that Pat Lam had to do his best for his family in the same way that Bundy does. But you could see that he was committed to the cause to such a degree that he was really pissed off with Pat Lam for leaving. When he just committed to 3 years, which actually must be up about now, is it?
I don't think there's any danger of him leaving or the IRFU letting him go.
Hopefully not.
I mean, like, I was listening to some podcast there, and like they were kind of even saying he will be potentially in the frame for going on the Lions tour, which is you'd have to be, right? I mean, like he's probably not sure if he's like, I'd say on form, you'd say he's in better form at the moment than Henshaw is.
Oh yeah, I would say that. Yeah, I would say that.
Him and Ringrose might be him and Ringrose might be starting in the Eight Nations.
It's interesting how many games when everyone, if you say to people, certainly on the East Coast, and indeed probably in Munster and Ulster, who's Ireland's starting centres, everybody goes, oh, Henshaw and Ringrose. But if you look over the last 2 or 3 years, it's Bundy Aki who started because of attrition and selection, not just attrition. Yeah. It's Bundy Aki who's actually started by far the majority of games for Ireland out of all the centres.
Yeah,
I mean, and he was there obviously in for the Grand Slam 2009 in nearly every game. So I'm a signed up member of the Bundy fan club. There's no question about that.
Anybody see the Ulster game? I didn't see it.
Saw bits and pieces.
Just saw the highlights, John.
Yeah. It looked like fun to watch. But it was end-to-end stuff, like.
Well, just on account of that's where we're going next week is Treviso.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
It is. But one selection I was surprised at was that Lowry was picked at 10 for Ulster. So I don't know whether Madigan is injured or I don't know.
I'd say McCarroll probably looked at it and saw Treviso coming over. I mean, it is after all like the Italian team, despite the fact that they're actually considerably better than they have been in the past. Like last year, they were very good, I thought. And they were very unfortunate to lose to Munster in the playoff game.
And they were very unfortunate, say, how many months ago? A year and a little bit ago when they were beaten by Munster in that playoff match.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, in that game. Sorry, a year ago.
Last year ago, yeah. Sorry.
But I'd say he probably thought, okay, I've got this guy here. We've been slotting him in here and there. He's actually an out half by trade. Let's give him a run at out half. I'd say I would. Sorry.
I was just going to say, well, they were at home to Treviso, so maybe there was who was on the bench. Was Burns on the bench or?
I don't know. I don't know. I just saw the 3 minutes.
But I mean, he was a Schools star out half, and that's. I mean, he's played most of his rugby for Ulster at fullback, so maybe they just decided to give him a run at out half just to see what they had, or keep the old out half reflexes firing.
No, I was just surprised, Dave, was because obviously Madigan didn't feature in the match against Toulouse.
All right.
And I don't know whether maybe I'm reading far too much into it, but just the last 2 matches that Ulster have played, surprised that he didn't feature. Another match I saw on the weekend was the Scarlets game against Munster. Another great advertisement for quality of a game, or certainly an entertaining game in the Pro 14 or Pro 12. Obviously, Peter O'Mahony's dropped elbow, big elbow from the top rope, was quite an interesting point within the game, and put his side under an awful lot of pressure. Spent 20 minutes off the pitch, and
21 and a half.
Okay, and then from dropping that elbow or shoulder, there was a penalty awarded. Lee Halfpenny was kicking absolutely everything. I think he got 8 from 8, and he slots one from the halfway line to negate the try that or certainly 3 of the 7 points of the try that they got a few minutes before. But like, there's 2 guys playing for Munster. Like, obviously JJ got the shepherd's hook after 40 odd minutes because he looked like he couldn't kick Snow off a rope. And then they bring on Ben Healy. But I'm glad, like, we were kind of critical of Munster last season for not giving youth its head. And they brought on Healy, who was on the under-20s, who was the scrum half, was playing. And all we're short of now is if they could bring on your man Ahern. Like, at least they've shown that they are bringing through some youth, some of their good quality youth players that are, contributing significantly at under 20 level.
Well, your man Healy showed that not only could he kick Snow off a rope, but he could kick it under pressure. With a game riding on it for such a young guy. He could kick Snow off the rope, back on, and probably up the side of the rope quite well. So they've unearthed a gem there, and if all they need to do is give him game time, because let's face it, JJ at this stage of his career is not the answer. Good and all player as he is. I mean, he's shown lots of things in the past, and he wouldn't let you down or anything, but he's not going to take him to the next level. You're not going to win a Heineken Cup with JJ at 10. Whereas in 2 or 3 years, you might win a Heineken Cup with your man. I don't know. You might not.
I think we might be getting a bit carried away here. He played what, 20 odd minutes?
Absolutely. No, but that's why I say,
let's not put him on a Lions tour yet.
That's why I say might. You've got Joey Carberry to come back. If he can pass out JJ while Joey Carberry's away, you've got.
They could have Ben Healy, double Jesus, or actual Jesus at out half. Won't make a difference if you're conceding to the opposition. What was it? 27 points, 9 penalties. That's madness. That is absolute insanity. I'd say Van Graan went absolutely pelting mad with them.
Yeah. You have to.
Yeah.
But that's like the indiscipline. Like we saw them. There was, I think, Tommy O'Donnell the referee was standing beside him and said 6 out of there, and he continues to pull down the ball. Peter O'Mahony, like, okay, maybe he's trying to be a hard man, and maybe what's your man's name? Bell, is it?
Yeah.
Bull.
Jake Ball.
Ball, yeah. Like,
he went to he should have been looked at as well.
Yeah, maybe it should. But you've scored the try. You're still in the heel of the hunt of the game. Yeah. Trying to be the hard man to take retribution out almost cost his side, a victory there that they obviously did get, but I'm very close to not getting that win because of his stupidity.
I'd say a lot of it was frustration. He'd had a terrible game. I'd say he just let frustration boil over.
Also, don't forget, Munster did that comeback from what was it, 10 points down when O'Mahony went off. I mean, he got a red card with 11 and a half minutes remaining or something like that. So they were without him for the rest of that game. So credit to them for coming back, but also the Scarlets. Jesus, what happened? Did they go fucking sleep?
Yeah.
Like, they were that far ahead with 14 men at, with 11 minutes to go.
Yeah, they were 24-10 up, John, with 68 minutes gone, 12 minutes to go, and they blew it. You'd be raging, wouldn't you? If you
Sickner. But credit to Munster because they had to do the hard yards to get it done with 14 men. So
it still had to be done all right. Interesting that the last penalty that they gave away that was scoreable was the one that Peter O'Mahony conceded at the try. That was Scarlet's last score. They didn't score at all against 14 men.
Yeah, fair enough. So then obviously the other couple of just results was Zebre were beaten at home by Cardiff 16-6. And what was the other one I had? And
Edinburgh.
Edinburgh,
beaten by
sorry,
Ospreys.
Edinburgh beaten by the Ospreys, yeah, 25-10.
Ospreys, the coming team.
They are, John. They have a new Welsh club to support.
Well, they have their new investor from whichever side of the 38th parallel it is.
Yeah, well, more power to them. We could do with a strong Ospreys in the league, for God's sake. Scarlets are carrying.
Certainly, in terms of the league, they are one of the teams with serious heritage. It seems strange to say about a kind of a new artificially created franchise, if you like, if you know what I mean, in terms of the length of the game. But they are one of the clubs in the league that have serious heritage. They won an awful lot of leagues,
We only passed them with our 3 in a row.
Yeah.
Like before that 3 in a row, they had the most leagues.
Mm-hmm.
So, they're, like you say, they've got serious heritage. They won it in 05, 07, 10, 12. I think that's it. But, that's more than most. So, yeah. So, come on, the Ospreys, give us a bit of a...
So, well, we kind of mentioned that obviously the government have decided not to push ahead with level 5, so we're all still at level 3 at the moment, which obviously is good news for the IRFU and Irish rugby in general. Elite matches can still go ahead, and obviously I'm not sure if they're going to allow crowds to go into the grounds. Probably not.
I think we'd be lucky. I was hopeful at one stage that we'd get into the Saracens game. When I'm talking at the start of the season, I was hopeful because things were looking good in July and August. But people were saying to me at the time, "No, we're not going to see rugby this year," and I think they were right. I don't think we are going to see rugby this year in as spectators. I know that Ulster and Connacht had a go at it, but now the current setback and the numbers in Ulster, like the serious numbers up there, so I can't see.
It was reported today, John, that Munster had a player test positive, so their training has been suspended. Now this guy, I don't know, obviously it hasn't been released who it is, but he didn't travel over to the Scarlets last weekend.
So squad who didn't travel.
Yeah. So, and I saw actually Eddie Jones has concerns. Just, I suppose, if he's going to select an England squad from 12 different clubs, he's obviously concerned that the mixing of those players coming in to the England training squad environment, what effect that could have.
Yeah, they're going to have to do some serious preparation on that in terms of, testing and stuff like that. Of course, the biggest problem isn't a problem because everybody at Sales South African anyway. So
could be
So Johnny Sexton to start via France, yeah.
I'd say so.
Do you think they'll pick him against Italy?
Not a chance.
Against Italy, the Six Nations or the Makey Up tournament.
No, the Six Nations first, isn't it?
Yeah, well then they will pick him. It's the Six Nations, and yes, they'll pick him. It's the Six Nations.
Well, we do have a slight iron in the fire there. I mean, England have one game to play and we've got 2. It's mathematically possible we can certainly do better than we currently are, but it's mathematically possible that we can win it, I think.
Yes,
I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but I'm sure the IRFU are looking for as high a possible finish as possible.
Yeah.
Prize money. Because of the prize money. And I mean, I can't remember the exact figure, but there's a big difference between coming third and coming second.
Yeah, England have an inside track.
Did someone not say some time ago that the difference was £1 million a place?
Could be something like that. Yeah,
I think it is big. I remember that.
England,
and especially sorry, John, especially at this time, like maybe 3 years ago when there's the economy is kind of booming and presumably they're getting good sponsorship deals and there's people are, there's a high demand for match tickets and so forth, and hospitality and all the rest of it. It's a different story now. Like that £1,000,000 is lifesaver money.
Yeah, keep the game alive money. England get a huge proportion of the money anyway. They have a baseline that's bigger than everyone else's, and France next. So, but after that, I think it's a million a place, pretty much. So let's say England get 15 million, no matter what happens, and everybody else gets 9, or France get 12. There's figures like that. And then on top of that, then there's the actual winning money, which goes up. I think it's more than $1 million for top place, but every place, second, third, fourth, is you're down $1 million each time. So it's like that's a lot of provincial teams you can finance.
It ain't walking around money.
Yeah, but like, I mean, put it this way, it's payroll, lads. You know.
Yeah.
Like that's what it is. It's keeping everyone in their employment for a while.
And that's just prize money. That's not sponsorship money. That's not the
TV money or anything. It's just prize money.
It's just prize money. Yeah.
Well, turning our attention back to matters rugby on the pitch, we obviously travelled over to Treviso this weekend. This was our opening fixture last season, and we won. Tight enough game, 32-27 over there. But as we touched on, we have considerable number of injuries. Our front row is looking particularly tight. Ed Furlong still out with his calf muscle injury. Porter damaged his hamstring. So those, we're kind of down to certainly third and fourth choice tight heads now.
We've got our injury joker, Kieran Parker, who ex-Munster lad.
Jersey, was that where he was? Jersey?
He was in Jersey, yeah. And then you're down into Clarkson's on that side, isn't he? He is, yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, we lost 2 tight heads over the summer.
Yeah, and your man Vaz is injured as well.
He's injured as well, yeah.
Back, yeah, he's out for a long time with his back, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's concern over that, isn't there? Obviously, I don't want to write off his career, but
it's not a good injury for a tight head to have.
I know they're concerned about it. Yeah, and we kind of mentioned it. Like one lad that we were hoping to see at the A game was Levy, and again, he must have suffered some sort of setback because
he did, didn't he? Did he do a hamstring or something else? It was mentioned that he'd done something completely different to his injury. His injury's healed, but he'd done something else in training or something. It was mentioned in one of the dispatches, as far as I remember. Or have I made that up in my head?
Was it a calf?
Something like that, yeah.
Anyway, we're clutching.
It's not. It's the one position where we're actually not short of players.
Yeah, that's true. Well, obviously one of them is gone now, Deegan. That looks a serious enough injury.
Yeah.
We mentioned Frawley and Sexton.
Frawley had a huge swelling shiner when he came off. Did you see it?
Yeah, it was massive.
Yeah. It actually reminded me of someone who broke a cheekbone.
It looked an awful lot like that.
Yeah.
It's amazing how durable Ross Byrne seems to be. He's rarely injured.
Yeah.
I mean, he has been injured in the past, but he's rarely out. He seems to be the one that rescues us when everyone else is injured. He had to step in for Sexton in the Heineken Cup 2 or 3 seasons ago and acquitted himself well.
There seems to be a massive attrition rate, and it's obviously just coincidence, but there's a massive attrition because they're all like on pitch injuries. A massive attrition rate on out halves in Ireland. We've had obviously Sexton, Carberry, Hanrahan, unfortunately Tyler Blaine-Dow, Billy Burns have all been out injured in the last 6 months to a year, whereas Ross Byrne just keeps chugging along.
Yeah. I don't think
leading up to the final in Newcastle there, 15 months ago, I think it was Conan was asked in one of these kind of pop quizzes, who's the least athletic player on the squad, and he immediately said Ross Byrne. It was obviously You don't have to be the, some sort of mini bodybuilder to be a successful rugby player.
Well, in fairness to him, he's not going to be as quick to the gain line as Sexton. Like he minds himself a little bit in games, but mainly that's because he's either cross kicking or distributing, or he's. I don't mean he minds himself in that he's afraid or he's fearful of getting injured.
It's a style of game.
He's got a lot of stuff in the box of tricks that isn't.
Does he bring it to the line, or does he take the ball on the line, and maybe he doesn't take the ball on the line? Is what I'm trying to say.
I don't think nobody does to the extent Sexton does. Like Sexton runs directly into injury with his face, and then waits until his face is a half an inch from somebody's boot or shoulder, and then offloads when he's drawn the man or two. So like that's his game. That's what he's famous for going.
Yeah, nobody plays as flat to the line as Sexton or Farrell. No other out half anywhere. The two of them are kamikaze.
Probably the two best in Europe.
Possibly, and it might, as you said, that might not be a coincidence. But a lot. I mean, so if he were to play close to the line, for example, he'd lose some of his in terms of how he burn his kicking. The cross kicking and stuff like that, he has turned his boot is a lethal weapon.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
So it's what you lose in the swings, you gain on the roundabouts kind of things. It's snakes and daggers, as a former teacher used to say.
Indeed.
Yeah, I wonder if his brother will get. Presumably he'll be on the bench, but he certainly does impress when he comes on.
Yeah, he looks like he might be the cross between Sexton and Harry and Ross Byrne.
Mm.
He can play very, very flat, and he can do all the kicking, and he seems to be more of an athlete, shall we say, than Ross.
Yeah. I hope Frawley's injury isn't too serious, that because he was just starting to find a nice little bit of game time. They moved him obviously to 12, and I really like that move.
Yeah.
That I mean, maybe from his own point of view, we've seen it in the past in Leinster and in other clubs where fellas, they see so many people ahead of them and they just kind of throw their arms up in the air and they go, well, how can he's got the Irish international captain in front of him. He's got Ross Byrne, who could possibly sit on the bench for Ireland, and then Ross Byrne's brother. So he's potentially fourth place out half or second choice inside centre.
In the exact same way as Paddy Jackson, remember him? Was kind of behind Sexton, but Ian Madigan was always going to get onto the bench ahead of Paddy Jackson because he could play 12 and 15. However, if Sexton was injured, then Jackson would probably start because he was more of a 10.
Well, Joe Schmidt said as much once in an interview. He said, I mean, Paddy Jackson's the number 2 out half, but if he doesn't start, he's no use to me.
Yeah, so but my point is Kieran Frawley, if he gets game time at 15 and 12, has those strings to his bow, which might get him selected internationally on the bench, because especially if you're looking at 6-2 splits and all that, guys who can play several positions, put him in a scrum half on the bench.
And John, like fellas have made very successful careers for themselves by switching positions. Like, whatever, say 15 years ago, Shane Horgan was a centre, and probably 20 years ago actually, and moved on to the wing, and likewise McFadden would have probably been seen as one of the successors to Darcy or O'Driscoll, and those lads continued hanging around for a while, and then he kind of had a little chat with Schmidt and said, well, look, maybe wing you might be better off switching to the wing. Might be more opportunities for you there. And again, McFadden had a fine career, playing 14 for Leinster and Ireland.
Exactly the opposite happened to Gordon Darcy, who started at 11 and ended up at 12, which sounds like they're next door, but they're worlds away from each other. One's a back 3 player and the other is a second out half nearly. So actually, didn't Darcy play out half in school?
Considering the amount of people who like to take credit for it, you can tell it was a good move.
Yeah,
I think he did all right anyway, didn't he?
He managed to survive.
15-year career. You know, he
Here-
only retired just before the 2015 World Cup, and he was going hell for leather to try and get selected in that, and when he didn't, he
here's one for you.
knocked it on the head.
Before lockdown, if you were going into this remainder of the Six Nations, your scrum halves would have been Murray and Cooney.
Yeah.
Do
Well,
either- Do either of them get into the team at the moment on form?
Cooney wasn't really getting a look in. Everybody was clamoring for Cooney to get a look in, but it
Well,
was
I was saying yours, not necessarily mine, but yours. But do either of them get
Cooney
into
would
at
have-
the moment?
Cooney might have played against Italy, might have been actually selected against
Yeah.
Italy.
You might have been, yeah.
and still much.
It looks like Marmion and Gibson Park are the men with form at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. But like, actually, Cooney, from the little snippets of highlights I saw of the Ulster match, Cooney's form seems to be improving.
Okay.
Possibly not coming back to where he was pre-lockdown, but he put a lovely little dink through and he set up another try, sort of a link roll. So, you know, he's obviously getting back into the swing of things. Yeah, you're dead right. Gibson Park and Marmion are on fire at the moment.
One of them has to start via Italy.
Sorry, John?
I said one of them has to start via Italy,
Yeah.
perhaps.
One of them might start against Treviso unless they decide to give McGrath a run. See how he responds to competition. Because in fairness to Luke McGrath and in fairness to Gibson Park, indeed, both have always responded well to competition from the other.
Yeah.
So Gibson Park's had a great game now, an absolutely great game against Dragons, and obviously has, you know, seized the jersey. But if Luke McGrath starts against Treviso and plays well, which, you know, knowing his competitive spirit, he's very likely to do, it'll make for a most beneficial headache for the coaches going forward.
Well, I have to say though that Gibson Park's style suits the way the game has gone in the last few months, more so than McGrath's, and the variety of his passing, the way he can link to James Lowe in a literally in a second, a fraction of a second, he can have the ball whipped out. I think in a game where you just said it earlier, Dave, rooks are not, you can't base a game around rooks now because you're just going to lose the ball. So guys who can get the ball away from rooks very quickly into the hands of a 10, for example, just are going to be, their case is going to be forwarded, you know, much.
And because he can play a bit wider as well, or he can manipulate the play a bit wider, it also means as we were saying about, because of the danger of rooking, if you can take the ball away from the opposition pack, you know, you stand a much better chance because at least you know what you're going to do, so you can resource that rook, whereas the opposition might not have a chance.
Indeed.
Mm-hmm. Dave, do we have any
No, we don't.
comments or
Our viewer is obviously on holiday. Don't know where he's gone.
It's a shame.
Gone a bait or somewhere. But our viewer is on holiday.
Oh well.
Fair enough. Well, like obviously it's just the opening weekend, so it's difficult to get too excited after, you know, a win against the Dragons and previewing the Treviso game. But we'll have a quick look at the other fixtures this weekend. There's a couple of good ones. Munster take on Edinburgh in Thomond. Obviously Edinburgh got to the semi-final and were unlucky to be beaten by Ulster with that last-minute kick. They were beaten at the weekend, so presumably they will want to come out all guns firing.
They won this fixture last year in a bit of a shocker from Munster. I heard Munster played a lot of young guys, and then I think Van Graan saw that and went, "Oh, I'm not playing young guys anymore. This is a load of shite." And
I shoot my job on the line and my neck on the line.
A lot of people, Van Graan got an awful lot of criticism recently over the selection for that game, because the selection for that game was so risky and they lost, and the points that they didn't get were why they had to play Leinster. So
Effectively, yeah.
he received a lot of, like, good word. He received a lot of retrospective criticism in the last couple of weeks over the selection for that game. So it'll be interesting to see what he does this week, because the clamour at the moment is obviously to play Healy and it's to play Casey. But there's going to be clamour coming from Lansdowne Road as well for Conor Murray to get game time, for guys that Ireland want to play. And one thing that's not going to help is that, in terms of Ireland, is that Shane Daly has picked up an injury. Now, he had played himself, or others had played him to a certain extent, into the Irish reckoning. And now he's got an injury, so it's very unfortunate for him. But I mean, you've got England's Mike Halley and New Zealand's Matt Gallagher there. So, or England's Mike, like when England beat us for the Grand Slam a couple of years ago, Miriam has a picture with a load of the England team, and one of them is Matt Gallagher.
Really?
Yeah.
I saw his father play for a combined province team in Donnybrook, probably, I don't know,
How was that game?
late 90s, right?
Yeah.
And
the reason I went to
actually
was to see John Gallagher.
Of course, yeah.
You know, the great.
Actually, I watched a really good documentary a few days ago, and it was from 30 years ago. Was the All Blacks came to tour against Ireland and Wales, and
89.
They kind of had 89, yeah, and so 31 years ago, and they had a kind of a fly on the wall documentary going around with them. But Gallagher, they played Munster down in Cork, and after the match in Cork, they got the bus up to Limerick and had a day on the piss in some rugby club in Limerick. But his grandparents both were alive at the time and lived in Limerick, and they were out with him. And anyway, it was like, I thought it was quite interesting that 10 years later he played for the combined provinces, and now 30 odd years later his son is playing for Munster.
Well, he could have played for Ireland, England, or New Zealand, and big choice there.
After that tour,
selected for New Zealand.
Famously forgot to bring something home with them. What was it?
Well, it wasn't the World Cup anyway, because you remember that.
Jay, any idea? After that tour, New Zealand famously forgot to bring something home with them. What was it?
Don't know.
Warren Gatland.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, actually, that's mentioned on that documentary. Actually,
is it, yeah?
That he was going to stay in Galway. Yeah.
Because they played Brent Pope as well, maybe around that time. Brent Pope as well, maybe around that time.
Yeah, he might have come over.
I don't think. He might have been. I have the program from that game around somewhere. I'll have to check it out.
Well,
I'll give you just one little. I was playing for Wanderers at the time, and Phil Matthews played against the All Blacks 3 matches in a row. He played for Ulster, I think on the Wednesday. No, sorry, played for Ireland on a Saturday. He played for Ulster on the Tuesday or the Wednesday, and he went over to London then and played the Barbarians on the Saturday. Played against the All Blacks 3 whatever, say 3 days out of 7. And the following day on a Sunday, I was playing, and I looked up from a scrum, and he's standing on the sideline watching me play. And I thought, well, he wasn't obviously watching me play; he was watching a scrum I was participating in.
This fucker's here. He's taking my jersey.
That's it. Yeah. So like different times back then, I suppose. But it was interesting watching that video. All right. Just going back to the games of the weekend, bit of an interesting one. Connacht traveling over to Cardiff, but they're actually not playing the match in the Arms Park. It's been moved to Newport because the pitch, I believe, is still being used as a kind of a field hospital in Cardiff.
I've heard that, all right. The Millennium Stadium, the whole Millennium Stadium at one stage.
Yeah, presumably the whole complex there has been used.
Yeah, it is. So yeah, they're playing in Rodney Parade.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
What else? Oh, Ulster travel to the Ospreys, so that could be a good game as well. Obviously, a resurgent Ospreys. Yes, and John's new club, Ospreys.
Australia.
How fickle he is. They'll be crying themselves to sleep in Cardiff tonight.
There'll be a new black jersey flinging its way over to John now, you know.
Here first.
Just go through the other ones. Just Dragons against Zebre and Glasgow against Scarlets.
Glasgow against Scarlets. Scarlets are looking to right the wrongs from last week, and
That's
so
our-
are Glasgow.
That's
That
our-
might actually be a super entertaining game because they're two teams that when their mind is at it, they really do love to throw the ball around and they're very good at it.
Yeah.
I think Glasgow have lost their way a bit under the current Cardiff or ex-Cardiff coach Danny Wilson.
Yeah, they need Mary's prayer.
And they were from Glasgow.
They were
That band
that guy.
named after actually is a band named.
Oh, it's one
after-
guy. The band is just a moniker around within which he worked.
Well-
He's not Danny Wilson, but there's no band Danny Wilson. There was one guy, and Danny Wilson was the stage name under which he worked. Sorry.
Named after a Frank Sinatra character in a film, believe it or not. There you go. Anyway, moving back to the rugby. I just think they've lost their way a little bit under since your man's gone back to the Southern Hemisphere, Rennie.
Yeah.
They're not the team they were. I'm not sure. Like most people are a step down from Dave Rennie, in fairness.
And like they had Gregor Townsend before that, so they had two international standard coaches,
and
and then they've been, yeah,
I'm not slagging the guy off. I'm not saying he's rubbish, but you know he's in some serious part of
Yeah.
it.
Yes,
It's like coming on stage coming on after the Beatles and the Stones. You know,
and the problem is for Glasgow is that, well, not the problem, but I mean they've come very, very close over the last 5 or 6 years to winning something, but never quite have.
that's it.
You know, they came up against us a couple of times, and various other teams that pipped them at the final post, as it were. I mean, even in their own city. I mean, we beat them in Parkhead 2
they
years
did
ago.
beat Munster in the final though, so they did win the comp.
Did they?
Yeah, but they were in quite a
And Ravenhill in
They were in-
2006, 2015.
Oh, they did. You're right.
But like they
Right.
got to the
Right, like
final, they got to the final in 14 and beaten by us. They won it then in 16 or 17.
15.
Sorry,
15.
what year was it? 15. And then they were beaten by us. So like they were kind of there and thereabouts, but they certainly never progressed in Europe.
No.
I think the year that we won it against Racing, we played them in the pool stages. And I went, John, yourself, myself went over to that match in Glasgow, and like they were pretty poor. I think we got a bonus point win
We did.
over there that day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and you're going away in a Heineken Cup weekend and you're getting a bonus point away victory. You shouldn't really, like, the home team shouldn't really be conceding 4 tries.
Especially not a home team that would fancy itself with the business end
Yeah.
of the competition.
Yeah, and they won the league the previous season.
I'd completely forgotten about that league win, but I mean, it to a certain extent, it does show that they're a team that I don't want to say flattered to deceive, because that makes them seem wishy-washy or something, because they've never been that. I mean, in fairness to them, it wasn't through a lack of effort or a lack of, competence. They just never quite. They were always unfortunate. There was a better team in their way, and then they lost guys. They lost Maitland. They lost Finn Russell. They lost Nakawara. They originally lost annoying
They
scrum
lost
half who came back there last year. Annoying scrum half come winger, John.
Oh, the Flying Fijian.
His name's falling out of my head.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I know the guy.
They lost a lot of guys, key guys, at various times. It took them a while to replace them. So
The Ouija from Fiji.
yeah. So it's. I mean, young Hastings looks like he might be a player.
Yeah, absolutely. Looks very good.
Yeah,
Better than his dad,
I
possibly.
wouldn't go that far.
Yeah, well, give him time. He hasn't had as much time as his dad yet.
The Hastings brothers
Give a
were
bit of time on it.
magnificent players.
Oh, absolutely, they were. And his dad was a full back. So, interesting to see As that was a good kicker too, actually.
Yeah, he was. He was great.
Very good kicker.
One of the first
Except
really
against
reliable
England.
long-range kickers.
Yeah, big
Remember-
stout boot.
Do you remember the kick he missed in, I think, 1990? 91, maybe? In front of the posts in Twickenham? Is that the World Cup?
I think it was. Wasn't it after the outrageous blackguarding of Jim Staples?
Yes, it was. That's right.
91.
A long time ago. Boys, any other news, any other business you want to cover?
Did anything else happen in World Rugby this week? We see,
Probably-
it's very hard actually to know where we are. I mean, I was thinking about this during the week. I was watching the Leinster game and I was saying, oh, I'm watching the pro whatever game. And there's so much still up in the air about, you know, our season, the structure of our season, the structure of the entire Northern Hemisphere season after we come out of this current issue. It's just so
In flux.
subject to change. You know, everything is TBC.
I think what we really need is a few weeks of stability. Like we've kind of had 5, 6 weeks of rugby. We need at least that again,
Yeah.
or obviously longer, so that TV companies can start paying money to the clubs to cover the games. Sponsorship can kick in, prize money can be distributed, all that kind of stuff. Because, like, I mean, I know Philip Brown, and there's no better man to put on the bail book than Philip Brown. But, like, I'm sure he's coming at it. And I mean, even, like, if you think about it, Irupa, or whatever the guys of the Rugby Players Ireland, you know, they did, like, they kind of saw, well, maybe he's putting on the bail book to us about payments and deferrals and pay cuts and so on. And he said, look, you can look at the books, lads, get your auditors in and have a look. I'm not, you know, I'm not spoofing you. Like, it is as dire as I'm
Yeah, it
telling
was
you.
Philip Brown's always saying that. He's always saying report. He's always saying report. Here's the books. Oh shit.
Yes. So, like, you know what I mean? If you had independent auditors or the
Yeah.
Rugby Players Ireland auditors looking at those books, there's a pretty good chance that things are as dire as they say they are.
Anything that gets that, if the IRFU are ever in a situation where they allow somebody from outside the organization look inside the organization, you know things are serious. Very serious. Anyone? But
Absolutely.
I mean, everything we need to, as you say, Jay, we need to get the game back playing. I'm not talking about getting fans in or anything like that. I'm not going anywhere near that. But in terms of, you know, we need 10 weeks of solid week in, week out rugby, as you say, to pour encourager les television and sponsors and whatever, and to get, you know, just to get the habits back for the players as well. And the other thing we need, because if the TV gets settled and the sponsorship gets settled and we get a mode of playing an organization that's settled, then they can start to answer the questions about the structure of the entire season, as it were.
Yeah, true enough. All right, boys, we'll leave it at that. Thanks very much for your contribution. Thanks very much for watching. If you are following us on Facebook or Twitter, please give us a like, a subscription, and a thumbs up. Cheers. Thanks, mate.